Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 172 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike, that is Gavin and Fia. And friends, do you guys make chili?
I've made it once or twice.
Chili? No.
Yeah.
I don't think that I have ever made chili.
I'm doing this new thing where I'm making chili.
Okay.
And like, it's really fun. It's really fun because you can throw whatever you want in there.
True.
Like, part of me wants to ask people like what their secret ingredient is, and the other part of me is it doesn't matter. You can throw whatever you want into the
chili
pot.
very much seems to me like the jazz of food.
The jazz of what? Hold on, what?
Yeah, jazz. It's very freeform. You can kind of just do whatever you want and call it jazz. At least that's my understanding of jazz, at least.
As he insults an entire genre of music.
No,
all
don't get me wrong.
Like, please write in.
You can be a spectacular artist and do jazz music. I'm not questioning that at all. But jazz, at least, again, this is somebody who does not listen to jazz. It has the reputation of being very freeform and very much more open to ad-libbing than other forms of music.
I don't listen to jazz either, for the record. I just like giving Gavin a hard time.
Yeah, well, I don't listen to jazz either. That's why I'm not going to comment on it.
Oh, I'm perfectly comfortable commenting on things that I know about.
And that's why we have this podcast.
No, we try not to do that on the podcast, actually. I spend many lunch hours a week doing the research for this podcast, so I don't do that.
Versus I, on the other hand, just show up.
Anywho, so chili.
Yeah.
Was there more to that, or is that...
No, I was just asking you guys. Like, it's my new thing. Like,
you're the chili
making
guy.
chili. I get a big pot. I'll make a giant thing of it. And then that's all I eat for a week.
Heck yeah.
Because there's so much of it.
So you like meal prepping?
Like, sort of. And, like, I don't even... Like, I've never meal prepped once in my life.
It sounds like you have.
No, what you're doing is meal prepping.
It's right. I know. I'm meal prepping. I didn't even try to do that. I just wanted to make some chili because it's the winter. And now, love doing it. Love trying different things. Big fan. Anyway, that's chili. If anyone there has like a real secret ingredient, like let me know. And I don't want to hear the BS that I've heard in other places. Like, oh, you've got to use like steak instead of ground beef. I mean, like an actual thing that I haven't read on Reddit already.
Sure. I don't know if you're going to find
in the meantime,
Reddit, in my opinion, is one of the best sources of human knowledge in the world, slightly behind Wikipedia.
I agree.
So,
Reddit for very different, actually, I was going to say for different reasons, for similar kinds of reasons, but very different feels.
Yes. If you want to, like, enjoy reading and go down rabbit holes, go to Wikipedia. If you want someone to be statistically probably kind of racist, go to Reddit. But you'll find the information you're looking for. You'll find the information you're looking for. You might just have to sort through a little of the internet to get there on Reddit. But I've definitely
with that, I think we have some...
I think I found that Reddit is a good way to try, at least attempt, to dodge the various AI nonsense that comes up with search by default now. So if you just...
I agree, and I can't imagine that's going to last like forever. I imagine like some like dipshit CEO at Reddit, that's my one swear for the episode,
sure,
is already cooking up a way to incorporate AI. But at least for the moment, like we've done a pretty good job of not having that.
Right. Like I've just gotten into the habit now of when I Google something, I just add the word Reddit at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that generally helps out a lot.
At this point, it's a necessity if you're, going to be on the internet doing stuff.
Yeah. Sad. Anywho, with that, Fia, do you want to do a little housekeeping, and then we'll get into Today in History and Seagrass Corner?
Sure thing. So, as you know, dear listeners, don't forget to rate the show on whatever platform you listen to us on, and to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to give us feedback about the show and any future topics you would like to hear on the pod. And if you want to be a guest on the show, be sure to fill out the guest form, which all that stuff can be found in the show notes. And with that, Gavin, what is next episode topic?
This was a big topic of conversation before the podcast even started.
It was.
True.
So I had to dig through the back catalog of our episodes. because I kind of realized, I'm like, well, we haven't done a dinosaur episode in a long time. And I was digging through like our backlog of episodes, and I kept going, and I kept going. And I realized we've only done like 3 or 4 out of 172 now. So we're going to be talking about stegosaurs.
Woo!
And an interesting group of dinosaurs that is, at least one species, is very popular, very iconic. But there's a whole lot of them, and they're interesting. And it always seems to be the case that the one that's popular is weird. It is not a normal representative for that group. So we'll talk about that in 2 weeks' time.
See, I'm a little bit upset because I've got a student in classes here that kind of looks like a brontosaurus, but I mixed up my dinosaurs and I called her Stegosaurus.
Oh, buddy.
The first time I saw it. And now, like, it's stuck. Now I can't call her anything else. She's the Stegosaur.
Well,
is she tall?
She's tall. Yeah, she got a long neck and everything.
I mean, etymologically, it kind of works because the prefix stego means roof.
Ooh, okay. All right.
So there you go.
Good. I'm glad that's not a total loss. Very nice kid.
Anyway. Mike.
Very smart, too.
What happened today in history?
So, on Today in History, we have the first U.S. president that was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. I want you both to take a guess as to who that president was.
Well, I don't know when they started doing the Nobel Peace Prize.
George Washington.
No.
We have G-dubs.
Definitely too old.
Robert F. Kennedy.
Too young.
President. Robert F. Kennedy was never a president.
I know.
Did you mean JFK?
Yeah.
I mean, Robert F. Kennedy did run. Famously didn't quite cross the finish line.
Yeah, that's one way to put getting assassinated.
Yeah. Let's see. So I'm going to say FDR.
You are very close. The year was 1906.
Oh, so not close.
But close. The year was 1906. It was Franklin Roosevelt's, I believe, 5th cousin.
Sure.
Theodore Roosevelt won the first Nobel Peace Prize for an American president.
For what?
So he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in bringing about the end to the Russo-Japanese War.
Okay.
That was, a pretty horrendous conflict. And like Teddy Roosevelt, I always tell my students, he was one of those guys that you could you'd have him and everybody else, in a room, and you'd be like, we're not coming out until we have an agreement. And Teddy Roosevelt, damn it, would have an agreement by the time he came out. Sort of the way that Trump talks about himself, that was Teddy Roosevelt. They only started handing those bad boys out in 1901.
Oh, wow.
So it only took us, 1, 2, 3,
5.
4, 5, 6 years. Because you include that first year.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't remember.
So
I couldn't remember if you said 1906 or 1907.
Yeah, 6, 7.
No.
Oh God, I hate that so much.
Anyway,
please, if you have a teacher in your life,
give them a break.
Give them a hug.
Give them $5.
Here's 6, 7. God, real quick. I don't mind 6, 7 if it comes up on its own. Whatever, it's fine. But the dumbest kids in my class, you know who you are. If I say the number 4. They go 6, 7. I'm like, what are we doing? It's got to come up on its own. You can't force it. Anyways, that's my rant. Fia, you've got some seagrass stuff.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that, Mike. So today I want to talk to you in the Seagrass Corner about another invertebrate that is becoming more frequent in my daily life, and I can't say for better or for worse, but it's here to stay, and that is the chitin. Do either of you know what a chitin is?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
No, Mike.
Sure.
If you don't know...
But for the listener, would you mind explaining?
Yeah, of course. So, do you know what a roly-poly looks like?
I think so, but now I gotta double check.
It's a little bug on the ground and it rolls up, and if it's flat, it's like...
We had a whole episode about them, in fact.
Yeah.
So
if they're flat, they almost look like a beetle. If they roll up, then they can roll.
Yeah. So imagine them in their beetle form. it looks like that, but you take out all of its little creepy crawly legs and everything, scoop out the shell, and you're just left with like the outside. Or scoop out the insides and you're just left with the shell. And then inside that shell, you just put a snail in there. And so you have this combo of like an isopod shell mixed with a snail underbelly. And that's pretty much what I think a chitin is in my mind.
How do you spell this?
Chiton.
That's a ridiculous spelling. Oh. See, some of these pictures on Google Images make it look like an amoeba.
I don't know why they would do that.
That sounds like AI. Without looking at the actual pictures.
Like not actually an amoeba, but like...
I mean, it looks like
it's basically it's a slug with... Or like a snail, but instead of like a swirly shell on its back, it has like a row of like plates. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, I can see that. All right.
Yeah.
Tell me more about them.
Okay. Well, so I've been processing samples of inverts that live on seagrass, and these guys have been coming up a lot. There's one species, and only one species that we have found, and that's Isochiton papillosus, or the mesh-pitted chitin. And this guy is found along the coast of Florida. It typically has like an oval shape, and then on top of it, it kind of has this like extra thin layer of a bunch of like little dots on it, so it looks like it's covered in mesh.
Okay.
And so basically, this guy is a grazer, like most chitins. They live their little slug life on hard surfaces, eating algae and whatnot. And so those are chitins. Welcome to my life.
So are they like moving into the area? Like, had you not been processing them before?
No, I think I'm just like I was doing samples that were in a different area, and now I am moving on to a new area, and this area is heavily coated in chitin.
Yeah, they're really neat because so they're gastropods, they're mollusks, and they have a really interesting fossil record. Not one that's interesting enough for us to make a whole episode about, but they're neat. They have very unique fossils because their shells are weird for mollusk shells because they have, I think, 8 plates, which is weird. They do. For a mollusk to have more than 2. But yeah, so they're interesting. So, good choice. Gavin approved.
Thanks. All right. Let's get into the episode then.
Yeah, so with that, today we are talking about the Pliocene Epoch, or Epoch. I've never heard which one is correct. Different people pronounce it different ways. Moving on. We're continuing our series in, just progressing through the different slices of the geologic time scale. And the Pliocene, basically yesterday. This was the slice from 5.333 million years ago to 2.58 million years ago. It was only, 2.75-ish million years long, a pretty narrow slice, but because it was basically yesterday, we have a ton of information about it. Those two facts kind of make this one of the harder time slices to talk about, because while we do have, like I said, a ton of data about this time period, it doesn't make for the most interesting of discussion topics because it is so similar to today. The more recent you get, the more information we have, and also the more things look like they do today, because that's just how time works. So this may be a shorter episode today, but we're going to go through the Pliocene and talk about some of the stuff that happened there and how the Earth, even though it was only a little different, it was still different, and how it looked compared to today. So, when looking at like what animals and plants were around, generally speaking, the climate, pretty similar to today. It was a couple of degrees warmer on average than today. Generally, the continents were where they are today, or at least pretty close. There's two major exceptions that we'll talk about. And throughout the Pliocene, the general main climatic trend that we've talked about in episodes past that's been happening, ever since like the end of the Eocene Epoch, through the Oligocene, then the Miocene, and then now in the Pliocene, with the global climate getting cooler and drier, that was continuing here as well. The Pliocene also much more notably becomes a lot more seasonal. This is when many of our modern, sort of regional seasonal weather systems sort of get set up, like summer monsoons in Southeast Asia. The general trend of like mid-latitudes, so for example, where Mike and I live, in places like Pennsylvania and New York, but also Europe, having like hot and humid summers, and then cold and really dry winters, that sort of general pattern wasn't as sort of substantial as it is today, and it sort of started becoming that way in the Pliocene. With some more climate stuff, so for example, Antarctica had ice caps for like 20-25 million years at this point, but the Arctic ice caps formed during this time in the Pliocene, so in places like Greenland, northern Canada, Russia, Alaska, places like that. That happened here. Really short time ago, if you think about it. 5-ish million years ago at the most. So compared to Antarctic ice, northern, Arctic ice is very recent. However, not everywhere was as similar as it is today. So for example, for most of the Pliocene, sort of on and off, the Sahara Desert was actually pretty humid and highly forested. Weird. That's just weird to think about, because that's one of the driest places in the world now. But as we'll talk about, part of that is because global climate changes as some major ocean currents kind of got diverted, but also Africa was still moving. Africa was moving relatively quickly northward at this point in time. And there's kind of just these bands, if you look at like a globe, there's certain bands north and south of the equator, where it's like at the equator, nice tropical rainforesty environments, and then it gets real dry in certain bands north and south of the equator, and that's where the Sahara is today. That's where other very deserty places, like I think there's another desert in like southern Africa, so southwestern Africa, very dry. Certain parts of South America, extremely dry, all at that same kind of latitude. Now, during this time is when the Mediterranean Sea forms. So this is, like I said, as Africa was sliding north, collides with Europe, toward the end of the Miocene and then into the Pliocene here. And so this is, we've never actually really talked about it on the podcast, but this kind of closes off the last remnants of a body of water called the Tethys Ocean. This was the ocean that sort of formed as Pangaea split up. It was like the body of water that formed as like the northern continents went north and the southern continents went south. This was the body of water that was in between them. Up until this point, it had basically been continuously getting smaller and smaller. And today, in modern times, it is completely fragmented into the Mediterranean Sea, the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, as well as technically sort of part of the Indian Ocean.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So, but at one time, those were all a single contiguous body of water. And so when Africa more or less comes into contact with Eurasia here, That's sort of like the last hurrah for the Tethys Ocean.
R.I.P.
Yeah. North and South America joined back up after a very long time away from each other. That closes off a lot of ocean currents and also contributes to a lot of the global cooling that we see here and then into the Pleistocene, the next epoch after this. So this was a big deal for these ocean currents, because up until this, there was basically an ocean current that ran more or less around the equator, but like around close to the entire Earth. It had to kind of dip below Africa, but then it came back up and went in between North and South America. But when Panama formed, the water couldn't flow from Atlantic to Pacific anymore. And basically, if water wanted to get from one of the Atlantic or the Pacific to the other, that current had to either flow up above North America into the Arctic or down below South America into the Antarctic, which made that ocean current that was really warm suddenly get really cold. And that messed with a lot of climate stuff. Sea levels also were a good bit higher than they are today, around 25 meters higher than they are today. Probably in large part.
Can I get that translated into freedom units?
Give or take.
It's gonna be like 88 feet, right?
80-ish, 85 feet, give or take.
Okay.
Largely because those Arctic ice caps weren't as large as they are today. So that's where a lot of that sea level change went to, was locked up in Arctic ice. And then lastly, before we start talking about the life things going on, the Pliocene, and a bit with the Miocene previously, but I didn't talk about it then because, frankly, I saw it as a little bit of filler content. And I needed a little bit of filler content for this episode. So the Pliocene is close enough now that we can actually sort of backtrack with a really good degree of confidence the various solar system cycles and how they impacted Earth's climate.
Oh.
Interesting.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. These cycles likely existed for a long, long time before this. But because we're working with so much less data as you go further back in time, it's basically impossible to differentiate climatic impacts from these outside of Earth cycles versus the inside of Earth cycles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, for example, during the Pliocene, we can tell that Earth's climate shifted. Which of two main effects are the ones that get talked about the most, because they're like unpredictable cycles that are like relevant to a geologic timescale. So prior to this, the 41,000 year cycle in the Earth's tilt had more of an impact. But during the Pliocene, it became more influenced by the 100,000 year cycle of the shape of Earth's orbit around the sun. The tilt cycle, that's 41,000 years, obviously is more frequent. 41,000 is less than 100,000. So it would happen more frequently, this cycling, but it was less influential. It had less of an impact, from like one extreme of the cycle to the other.
Mm-hmm.
But the 100,000 year cycle of Earth's orbit around the sun was less frequent, but quite a bit stronger of an influence on the climate. So before this, it was mainly influenced, at least of the two, by the shorter cycle, more frequent but less intense. During the Pliocene is when it shifted to be affected by the less frequent but more intense cycle. Does that loosely kind of make sense?
Yes, I think so.
I'm willing to say yes, but...
Okay.
Could you, explain it like I'm 5?
Sure.
Yeah.
I said sure, and then actually thought about it for half a second and was like, oh, how do you explain the solar system to a 5-year-old?
All right, 10.
Okay.
10.
Okay, I can work with that. So, the Earth is tilted, right? Like our North Pole is not perfectly north, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that tilt, generally, like on human timescales, we use I think it's 23.5 degrees.
That's my understanding.
That wiggles a little bit.
Sure.
And so that's the axis that Earth like spins on. So if you spin a globe, you're spinning it on that 23.5 degrees off of like straight up and down axis. That kind of wiggles.
Happens at what time scale?
That happens in a 41,000. I'm sure it's not exactly 41,000 on the dot. Year cycle.
Okay.
So that wiggling happens, to say it starts all the way wiggled to the left. By the time it wiggles to the right and then wiggles back to the left, 41,000 years.
Got it.
Wow.
But because that's a relatively minor change, because what that changes is what angle sunlight comes in at, basically.
Right.
Which can influence a lot. That's basically why we have winter versus summer.
Mm-hmm.
But those little variations make bits of difference. There definitely is a noticeable difference in the climate, but it's not super intense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas separate from that, the Earth orbits the sun.
Okay.
It orbits it in not a nice, perfect circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
it's an ellipse.
Yes, it's an ellipse. During certain parts of the year, it takes 1 year to orbit completely around the sun. And there's a 10,000 year cycle where that ellipse also has a little bit of a wiggle to it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And again, it's complicated space physics, so I don't have like the math here for us, but that we orbit it on a yearly cycle. And if you think about it sort of like a record spinning on a record player, imagine if it just sort of like every so often the record was like slowly tilting to one side or another. Back and forth, kind of like a seesaw.
Okay.
As I understand it, Earth's orbit on this 100,000 year cycle wiggles a little bit in that sort of seesaw-y fashion as we're orbiting around the Earth, or the sun.
And to get back to the initial tilt, it takes 100,000 years?
So the tilt, 41,000.
Yeah.
The orbiting around the sun, 100,000.
Right. Okay.
And so, as you might expect, wiggling how far or near you are to the sun can make quite a lot of difference.
I see, yes.
And so again, I don't know the exact particulars to it. As for closer versus farther away, maybe we're just like, I would assume that's what it is. It's closer versus farther away because I don't know what else would make this large of a difference. Because we'll talk about this more, and I will look more into it for when we do the episode about the Pleistocene, because this 100,000 year cycle, especially in the early parts of the Pleistocene, this is what makes the ice ages kind of happen.
I see. Okay.
On the cycles that they do. There are other things that are on different cycles that are neither this 100,000 or 41,000 year cycles. And occasionally those two cycles line up in a way that makes it particularly cold or particularly warm.
Okay.
Yeah, so these two things are happening at the same time. It's just sometimes through quirks of other things going on in the climate, one becomes more important than the other.
So during this time, the sun was more important.
Yes, it shifts from before this, the tilt,
right?
The 41,000 year cycle was more influential. During the Pliocene, it sort of transitions so that the orbital cycle becomes more important.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
That we can just know that?
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say. It's like, this is so recent that we can tell not only that these cycles were happening, but we can figure out how much effect they had relative to each other, and that we switched from one to the other.
That's cool.
I would love to be the first guy that figured this out and to show up to a meeting and be like, all right, guys, so you're not going to believe this.
Right. This makes me think of like It's Always Sunny meme of like Charlie in front of like the string, the
Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah. Yeah, just a mad person stepping in front of a conspiracy theory board with strings connecting all the dots. That's what this makes me think of, because if you were to talk about any of this to somebody who just like a Joe Schmo on the street who isn't particularly interested in science, you would sound unhinged.
I mean, you did sound unhinged for a little bit, and I need you to just look it down a little bit.
Yeah. just need you to talk slower is what you really did.
It's like, not only is Earth tilted, but the tilt wiggles.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're not going to go more into it than that, because I have this in bold and italics in my notes. It's really complicated.
Got it.
But this is the kind of thing you can do when you have such a huge amount of data to work with, like we do from these recent slices from the geologic timescale. So, with all of that, abiotic, non-life stuff out of the way, this is a paleontology podcast. We're here to talk about the critters. First,
let's do it.
Get the plants out of the way. Generally, this cooling and drying trend continued to be great for grasses and grassland environments. They spread further across the continents, with large forests becoming, further restricted. This was also a time, notably, when deciduous trees really started doing great with their adaptations, particularly to the increased seasonality that was getting sort of kicked up here. As for animals, honestly, they're 90% at least the same as we have today. Maybe not the exact same species, but for sure most of the same genera. Particularly for marine invertebrates, basically identical to today. Yeah, sorry. But there were some very obvious exceptions to this, though. Most notably for me, just as a mammal paleontologist, various species of proboscideans still running around. That is elephants and friends. We have 3 species of them today. There are 2 species of African elephant and 1 Indian elephant. They were extremely diverse at this time. Dozens and dozens of species all over the world. Mammoths, mastodons, gomphotheres, stegodons, dinotheres. They were all over on all continents except Antarctica and Australia. Even getting down into South America once North and South America connected. They were doing fantastically, especially at the beginning, and then generally decreasing pretty steeply toward the end of the Pliocene. But they were all very diverse in their size, in their tusk-shaped. Some of them, modern elephants all are pretty consistent because they're fairly closely related, where they just have the 2 tusks on either side of the trunk at the top of the mouth. There are some that, in addition to those 2 tusks that modern elephants have, they also had tusks on the bottom jaw. There were some that had no tusks on top, but tusks on the bottom. Lots of different types and ways of being an elephant, running around all over the world at this time, doing great. Some bird genera that were very widespread now, or at least very famous today, evolved during the Pliocene, so were not present really before this. So, for example, the genus that is crows and ravens first evolved during the Pliocene, so before this there were no crows and ravens. Horned owls, swans, even the ostrich first showed up here. Ostriches, at least in my brain, I'm like, oh, that's like an old kind of bird. And that's not just because, it walks on 2 legs like a dinosaur. It also is like a group of birds that split off really early from most of the other birds. But the genus that ostriches are in didn't show up until the Pliocene, only a couple million years ago. Let's see, there were giant ground sloths and glyptodonts, which were sort of like giant armadillos, but not quite. They'd been doing really great in South America, and it's, when North and South America joined again, those guys made their way north. So they were kicking around, at least the southern parts of North America as well, though some of the sloths got pretty north. This is when South America got most of their iconic native species like llamas, alpacas, tapirs. All of their deer, weasels, cats, and dogs also came from this time. They had none of those things before this. Lots of things that are now extinct made the journey from North America to South America as well, like mastodons and horses. And there were also lots of animals in places where they aren't native today, like horses, camels, and rhinos here in North America. There were some groups that had been around for a long time before this that went extinct here, such as the oreodonts and calicotheres. Oreodonts are a group of even-toed ungulates, so in the same broad group as cows, goats, camels, giraffes, stuff like that, deer. Mm-hmm. And in their environments, they kind of worked vaguely sheep-ish, but eating more leaves than grass, if that makes sense. But they'd been around for a really long time. They'd been around since like the late Eocene or so. So by this point, like 35 million years or so. And calicotheres, one of my favorite groups of animals. We love to call them gorilla horse bears. A group of odd-toed ungulates, so related to horses and rhinos and tapirs, that are just completely bizarre. But they'd been around similarly, at least since like early Oligocene, so probably like 20 to 25 million years before this. They finally go extinct here. Most of the native South American ungulates go extinct around this time. We don't have time to go into all of them because they're really strange. But they had all of their own mammals and things that were already kind of like not doing hot by the time North America linked up with South America again. But once the North American stuff got there, it really didn't help. So it was around this time where they all started to go extinct too. The last, also in South America, the last of the forest racids, also known as the terror birds, went extinct. They were very large, carnivorous, flightless birds. There was one species that made it to North America and did pretty well for a bit. For more information on the sort of exchange between North and South America, see way back in episode 16 on the Great American Biotic Interchange. We had many groups of animals also sort of moved into their modern-day regions during this time. So North America had been connected to Asia like on and off for a while at this point. But it was during this time when modern horses, rhinos, camels, dogs, bears, weasels got to Africa for the first time. So up until this point, Africa had no camels, zebras, rhinos, any of its dogs, or stuff like that. They didn't have it up until this point. Famously, the opossum moves north from South America into North America and has been doing fantastic in everybody's garbage since. The first rodents make it to Australia at this point. Up until this point, it was pretty much just marsupials doing things. As rodents were doing great, rodents did great everywhere and expanded quite a lot in the Miocene and now into the Pliocene. But it took a little bit for the things that eat them to sort of catch up. Specifically snakes. Snakes, especially venomous snakes, had a real great time here in the Pliocene. Rattlesnakes evolved in the Pliocene for the first time, so they've only been around for a couple million years. Crocodilians had been living in Europe, and like not just like southern Europe, like pretty much all over Europe for a long time up until now in the Pliocene, when it finally got a little too cold for them. In North America, alligators were living as far inland as places like Tennessee up until about this time. And with that, we're pretty much exactly the Earth we kind of recognize today. And it's weird, because in a lot of ways, modern Earth looks more like the Pliocene than it does the slice of time that's in between now and then, the Pleistocene.
Oh, why is that?
Because the Pleistocene was real cold.
Okay.
That is what many people call the Ice Age. We've had an episode about the movie Ice Age. And
yeah,
things got real weird during that time. So we will talk about that in a future episode. But one last thing to sort of end us off on here. As much as the world looked, by the end of the Pliocene, looked incredibly similar to what it does today, there was one incredibly notable exception, and that's us. So, the human lineage split off from the chimpanzee lineage during the Miocene. So, 8 or 9 million years ago, a couple million years before the start of the Pliocene. But it was during the Pliocene when we start to be our lineage basically become human. We were already bipedal by the start, but throughout the Pliocene, some of the other things that make us happened. Firstly, our likely direct ancestor, the genus Australopithecus, evolved. Very famous, known from thousands of fossils across eastern and southern Africa. Likely first evolved around 4.5 million years ago during the Pliocene. During this time, there were lots of very similar Australopithecine apes, so like in this same sort of group. Rather than just the one species of us that's around today, they were running around all over eastern and southern Africa. And throughout this span of about 2.75 million years, there were at least 6 or 7 different species of us just running around.
Huh.
6, 7.
Oh my god.
6, 7. When it's organic, it works.
When it's organic, it's fine. I have no problem with that.
And so some of the things that happened throughout the Pliocene that got us at least a good chunk of the way from, where we were to now where we are, is that our brains grew like balloons. If you were to look at like an early Pliocene, Australopithecine to one at the end, the brain is like double the size. It's crazy. The first stone tools show up during the Pliocene. So this is when we started making stuff and using it for other stuff. And by the end of the Pliocene, the first members of the genus Homo evolved. So this is when the first things that you would look at and be like, that is a human. They look different. They don't look like a person I'd see walking around New York City or Syracuse, New York today. But that is a human. And for a more detailed but still very rushed overview of human evolution, see episode 121, all about how we got from run-of-the-mill primates to basically humans. And then episode 122, about early humans, Neanderthals, and other human species. Those are 2 episodes that I had a lot of fun doing, and I wanted to call out those episodes. So, with that, we end off at 2.58 million years ago at the start of the Pleistocene. And it's not just the end of the Pliocene, but also the end of the Neogene period. So, Cretaceous period, Jurassic period. The end of the Pliocene is also the end of the Neogene period. So there's such a large change between, these different slices, the Pliocene and the Pleistocene, that we decided it was a whole new geologic period, which isn't nothing. That's kind of a big deal. So why? Well, you will have to listen to that episode when it comes out in order to find the answer to that question. Spoilers, it got really friggin' cold. But yeah, so we will have that episode eventually, sometime in the nearish future.
Awesome. Well, thank
And
you
is
so
that what we have for this episode?
Yeah, that's all I got.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Gavin. I actually have a quick question on the whole Ice Age thing.
Yeah.
So I've heard people say the Ice Age, and I've heard people talk about Snowball Earth.
Sure.
Are those the same thing?
No.
Okay, so they are different things. All right.
Yeah, Snowball Earth was a couple of different times when, however cold, the Pleistocene, the, Ice Age that most people are referring to was, Snowball Earth was far colder. There's a couple different times that it sometimes refers to. Most of them are before there was complex life on Earth.
Okay.
So a long time ago. Where probably all but the equatorial regions were pretty much frozen solid. And then there's another time, I think in the late Ordovician period, if I'm remembering right, where it was less cold, but there was actually complex life going on, so it was a bigger deal to us. So, yeah, there are times where Earth has been far colder than the Ice Age is, or is/was. But at no point during the Pleistocene were there glaciers in at sea level near the equator, right?
Gotcha. Okay, and that would radically upend our current understanding of the history of this planet.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. That I had been chewing on that recently, and I figured that now was a good time to ask.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, unless you have anything else, this has been episode 172 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike. That was Gavin and Fia. Make yourself some chili to tide you over until 2 weeks from now when we see you again. Until then, take care, everybody.
This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Gavin Davidson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Finella Campanino. It was sound edited and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.